Okay, now we're going to get into the process. Now, this process is something that I made up on my own. It's just something that I do. I tend to, I'm just sort of a nerd geek like that. I break things down into steps by asking myself a lot of questions. And I ask, why do I feel this way? And I go deeper and deeper and deeper into what does that mean? Why do I do that? Why does that matter? And so it was through a series of questioning myself as we went through the process of grieving over our firstborn child dying that I came up with this method, I guess you could say, or this process, these steps. And I kind of made it up as I went along. And what I'm going to share with you is how to consciously grieve so that you can be happier as you consciously grieve. I didn't know that I was doing that per se. I was just doing the thing that I always do, which is I like to really live life and like engage, dig in, do whatever it is. If I'm going for something, I'm kind of type A about it like that. I just fully do it. And I examine myself doing it as like I watch myself from the outside doing the doing. And I'm like, okay, where am I going with this? Why do I want to do this? Um, why do I care? And then I set goals or parameters of what I'm trying to achieve. And then I break it down in why I'm doing it, how I'm doing it, and if it's effective for me. And so then that's how I come up with a process. Um, I have like a very different brain than most people. Um, I have dyslexia, which I think is a great thing because it gives me this different brain. I am dyscalculic, which is like some teacher tested me for all these things. And so my brain works differently. So I'm able to see things. This is how he explained it. I go from, instead of A to B to C, I go from A to C. But in going from A to C, I see a bunch of different things and ways of seeing things, if that makes sense. Anyway, okay, the process. So, what we want to do is realize that we are grieving. And so, to really dig in, like I do, dig into the grieving, which by default puts you out of this thing that's happening to you. So, it's like when we're in the bubble, we're like flooded with emotions, all this stuff is happening to us. But when you decide, I'm going to do this, I'm going to take my life back, I'm like ready to be living with the world again, then we go into this different part of the brain. It's the decision making, it's the positive, proactive part. It's not, like I said, it's not like that compartmentalized. It weaves through all these different parts of the brain, but there's these different systems that our brain will operate in the I'm letting this happen to me, I'm in a bubble, versus another system where I'm like more positive. I'm doing this, I'm getting on board with my life, and here's what I'm going to do. So this process is just a series of things that I wrote down. One is to be, of course, I said, be very conscious. Give yourself permission to take time out. So it's not being in the bubble and going, oh, I'm grieving. It is like, I'm going to take time out to do this. So, do you see what I mean? It's like it has a different feeling to it also when you're like, I'm doing this. Um, and when you give yourself permission, you need to be in the space. It feels like a little bit oxymoronic to say, I'm doing this, but I'm just going to be. So that's like from the start to the finish, there's a process of doing, and then you do all these different things in between, all these steps. And then at the end, you are doing these things and you have to also let go and just be. So that's to give you like the big picture of where we're going. Okay. Um, and another thing that I really learned that was very helpful for me, which can set the timeline for yourself of your arc of grieving, your processing, is that when our daughter died, a chaplain came over I'm not particularly religious, not that I'm against religion, but I just didn't expect that to happen. I don't know where he came from, but he said to me something so valuable that helped me so much. And I just want you to hear it, even though I did mention it before, that there is no timeline for your grieving process. So you are an individual. Everyone grieves differently. My husband grieved differently than me when we were grieving the loss of our daughter or the death of our daughter. I don't really see it as a loss, but the death. Um, and we gave each other time, as much time, without judgment to do what we needed to do. And so that's a mentality too, I think, to not be in that I'm in grieving mode. I don't know like what I'm supposed to be doing, but I want you to know what you're supposed to be doing because that puts you in this other part of your brain. You are supposed to take your time, whatever you need. And even though that might be the same as, oh, I'm in this mode, I don't know how long it's going to take me, it actually is different. It's a different part of your brain that's engaged. So we're talking about like brain engagement, which causes different chemicals to happen in our body, which really makes the difference in that peaceful versus really agonizing kind of grief. Not that you shouldn't agonize if you want to, if you need to, actually, that's great. And then you should just go for it. So this is bringing me to the next thing, which is rituals. So, like I said, some people need to feel the deepness, and I encourage that. Um, I think that, and I'll talk about next about this, but sometimes we don't engage in the deep feelings. But to be able to really identify and go there, like really go there, is part of what helps you to process. So my nephew died. He was 24, and I was the first one to speak at his memorial. And I saw it as an opportunity to help these other 24-year-olds to start their grieving process. So a lot of times when we first have something happen, that puts us into a grief process, we are disengaged from our feelings. So if you can identify your feelings and know that you're in whatever stage of grief you are, and just like fully do it. So when you do that, and I'll have in the workbook, all the different levels and stages of grief so that you know where you are, you can identify that. But also we're going to talk about where it lies in your body. But with rituals, what for me, when my daughter died, I kind of like thought to myself, what do I need to do? What am I feeling? There's a lack of something here. And I realized that I had a baby for the longest time in my belly and in my arms. And then that was gone. Like I didn't have this thing. I didn't have this weight. I didn't have this, whatever it was that I was so used to that became a part of me. And I realized that when a circle of moms, we got together and we were getting together weekly, maybe. We got together and everybody had their baby on their lap. And of course, they still invited me to share that space with them. And I was there without this thing in my body or on my lap. And I was like, oh, I have, a need to feel something. And my friend, Anat, who was like so perceptive, she came over and makes me cry, think about it. She put her child on my lap. And it was just like, oh, I have the weight that I need on my body. And another thing I did was I felt like every time I thought of her, there was nowhere to look. I would look at her, but she wasn't there anymore. So I got one of those yahrzeit candles that lasts for days. I think it's like 8 days or how many days. And I had that lit. And every time I thought of her, I had a place to put my gaze upon that candle and that flame. And the flame felt like, to me, it was alive. It was like her spirit was alive. And I don't know if she was there or not. It really doesn't matter. But it was just more so that I had a place to look, to focus, to feel heat, to feel something alive, moving that comforted me. And then I would wake up, like there's a lot of sleeplessness when you're grieving, anxiety, all kinds of things and that happen. So I would wake up between the hours of like 2 and 4 in the morning or somewhere in there. They say that's really common. And then I would just go outside and look at the moon, or maybe inside if it was cold. It's not really cold in Hawaii, but sometimes it was. And that was just a thing to do. So it's like to create these rituals, I think you need to realize like you need to create a thing to do when you're feeling a lack. Like there's a process of figuring out what it is that I'm lacking, and then what do I need to place there? What kind of thing do I need to actually go and do? Like with my eyes, I'm putting my gaze on the candle. With my body, I'm putting some weight right here. So that is what I mean by creating rituals, so that you do something on a regular basis when you're feeling an emotion that is part of the process, and you can continue to process, feel deeply, experience that grief, that feeling like I don't have that weight, that being anymore right here, and sink into that feeling. Literally don't try to shy away from it. Don't try to push it away. Just know it, feel it, and go, and know that you valued that feeling and that it is well warranted that you have this feeling still. It's appropriate. There's nothing wrong with it. And that you just observe it. And in this observation process, I see it as sort of like the straws. Remember I talked about those layers? You're like taking the straw and you're looking at it. You're going, You're breathing it in. You're soaking up the joy or the sorrow or whatever it is in that straw. And then you're putting it aside. And so you can do that with this big straw pile. You can take off these straws. And that's how I see processing.